Hey everyone, it's Devin with Board Game Co. Previews, and I am just going to jump into this absolute brawl of a game. It is very, very interesting. So this is ANIMALCATRAZ from Geronimo Games. It is a 2 to 8 player action selection and competitive prison-themed game with animals. So it's ANIMALCATRAZ is the name of the title here. Now I'm going to give a couple of the regular disclaimers, which are this is a prototype, so do not think that this is finalized content in terms of the component quality and stuff like that. And then also we will go ahead and give you the crowdfunding links below as needed. But I'm going to give one additional caveat or disclaimer at the beginning of this. This takes place in a penitentiary. This takes place in Alcatraz, but for these animals. So this is mature themed in terms of the content, and it's got like kind of a grim or dark sense of humor to it. So if that is not your vibe, or this theme or this setting is not your vibe, just something to be aware of. And then now that I've kind of given that little description at the beginning, I think we can jump in and start talking about stuff. So this is a game that is designed to take about 1 to 2 hours depending on the mode that you play. And I'm going to go ahead and hop over to the top down. And on the top down here, you can kind of get a sense of the scale of the board. And then over here, I've got the player area where you've got kind of your portfolio or your folder, along with all the information about who you are and what different things you have in your file. So the board at large is going to be representing the space that you have to play with, and that is a little bit segregated in terms of where you can move to. So you've got 4 corner rooms here. You've got the infirmary, you've got the library, you've got the supply or utility room, and then you've got the cafeteria. Those are 4 separate rooms that then lead into the cell blocks. The cell blocks are these long hallways here, of which there are 4 of them, and they're connected to where the inmates will, or the convicts, will start in their cells, and it also has access to the central courtyard, which has other actions outside of the 4 other locations. There's a lot going on here, but once you actually understand the different actions you can do, it does actually pick up the speed of play and give you quite an interesting, nuanced experience of all of the different options you have in front of you. There are 2 ways to win this game. Number 1 is building up your reputation, and that is on this reputation track right here. In the normal game, you're going to start off as influential, and you can build your way up to being notorious, and then one of the win conditions is to become the kingpin. As you can see here, it mentions right here that you are going to enact a riot when you get to a high enough reputation, and that's because all of the other inmates see you as enough of a threat to come after you, and you have to defend your territory and your status within the prison. And so that is one way. You're trying to fight, you're trying to build up your status, you've accepted where you're at, and you understand that you got to beef up to live. However, the other option is escaping. As you progress through the game, you're going to be getting contraband cards. Some of these contraband cards could be tied to actual escapes. And so if you see right here, you have to go through 2 relatively difficult roles that you have to succeed on in consecutive fashion. There are certain items that you could gather, but there will be inmates who know that you are trying to escape, and maybe they don't want you to do that, because if you're escaping, if they're not escaping, no one's escaping, is kind of the mentality. So they can stop you once you go ahead and reveal it, but it is also a way out and a way to win the game. Because once you get those items, and if you successfully go ahead and escape, it finishes, and there is no riot because you are the victor. You've gotten out of prison. You're not resigned to staying in there and competing for reputation. Your goal is to live your life outside of the walls of ANIMALCATRAZ. Those are the 2 ways to win. Build up your reputation until you become the kingpin, or collect all that you need to do and escape using your brawn and using your wits. Those are the 2 ways to win the game. So let's take a look at what's happening on the board here. You've got all of these locations. And there are guards that are moving around, and they will rotate every single round. You're going to have this round tracker here that shows the progression of a day, and then the time at night in which players have to go back to their cell. But during the day, guards are going to be making their rotations, which means they're going to be at certain areas in which they will block that action. And so you have to combine what you want to do with what's possible on your turn, because some guards will be blocking actions, some guards will be blocking actions and the ability to move into the courtyard, so that affects how you might path your decision in terms of your action costs. So let's get to action costs and what it is. This is a strategy in which you have 5 base actions that you can do on your turn, and certain events or certain things cost 1 action or they cost 2 actions. There are kind of, how would you describe it? Just maintenance things that you can do on your turn if you're coming back into your cell and you want to swap things between what you're carrying and what you're holding in your cell. You can go ahead and do that at 0 cost as long as you're in your cell. There are other things that you can do throughout the game that don't cost actions, but things either cost 1 or 2 actions, and you have 5 on your turn that you are going to be doing. As a player, your decision process centers around how are you going to maximize those 5 actions. If I'm moving out of my cell, does it make sense to move into the courtyard and maybe to increase my cunning? Or if this was not blocked, go ahead and increase my strength. These options are all interesting, but they also have several other layers that you have to understand. If you're looking at your player board, there are 2 core things that you're focused on. You've got your strength value and you've got your cunning value. Different characters start at different values. So this sticky finger starts at 1 for strength and 3 up here for cunning. And then Big Bill starts at 0 for cunning, but he is quite strong to begin the game. So you have that asymmetric start, but then also the decision space comes around. What is your aim? What is your goal? If your aim is reputation, then it's anything you're trying to do to gain rep within the prison. Increasing your strength will help you with fights. Increasing your cunning will help you with either stealing from other players or corrupting guards. As you can see, for the most part, guards here have this black standee, and that means that they are not corrupted and that they perform their job normally. However, if you ever corrupt a guard using your cunning and possibly one of the contraband items that they are weakest to, so it looks like this particular guard likes alcohol. If you bring an alcoholic contraband item, you can increase your likelihood of successfully corrupting them. When you do corrupt a guard, you get 2 different benefits. The main benefit is whatever location they're on, you can perform that action at 0 cost. So as I said, you have a base of 5 actions, but if you corrupt guards, you can actually maximize actions, especially expensive actions that cost up to 2 actions. So this green convict here can move into the courtyard without the worry of being blocked off because they have corrupted this guard, and they can also for free increase their strength by 2 notches because wherever this guard is, that action is free. So even though a guard might block someone else from attacking in this particular cell block, if your guard that you've corrupted is on that spot, you can attack and steal at will, but other players can't. So it's not only what actions are you focused on doing, it's also a question of, do you need to corrupt the guards in order to make your actions more efficient, or are you aiming for something else? These other locations have their own contraband deck, and those contraband decks are individual to those locations. They're specific to there, and you're not able to get them in the general contraband deck or in the regular deck until you start continuously cycling through the discard, and eventually maybe you'll get those items if they've already been used or already been discarded. The reason why that's important is, as I mentioned, you got to figure out what you're doing. You got to figure out if your focus is to increase your reputation and become the kingpin and win the riot, or if you're trying to escape. Because if you're trying to escape, these items that make it much more likely that you'll successfully escape, they can only be found in certain locations. So sometimes it's not about confronting other conflicts or convicts. Sometimes it's not about manipulating the guards or the state of some of these other locations. Sometimes it's about finding what you need so you can get out of there. And that is where kind of the dichotomy of your decision space is centered, and where you have to determine what you want to do. There's a few other elements that come into play that I haven't talked about yet. You've got crimes. These crimes are things that you can come over here to pick up from the showers with Janitor Jerry, and it gives you a mission, and whatever that mission is, if you successfully finish it on your turn or meet the conditions that it requires, you get bonus reputation for them, along with whatever reputation you might gain from the activities at a core level. So you have crimes that you can commit, and you also have these events. There's a time limit on the game. There's a time tracker. So if you can see the base board over here that is kind of in the shape of brass knuckles, this marks the round progression of the game. You have round 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that imitates a full cycle or a full day within the prison, and that is 5 different rounds, with the 5th round being a specific unique one. In the 1st and 3rd, you can see this symbol here that it signifies that you're revealing an event card. There are only going to be 5 event cards in the game. So whenever you get to the point where you've reached all 5 event cards, you're going to get to a direct end-game state. It is going to cause a riot whether you actually make it to Kingpin status or not. So you have those 2 ways in which you can direct the course of the game, but there is also a time limit baked into the gameplay. So if you're looking on here, you've got the progression of events being revealed on the 1st and 3rd rounds, and then you have full clear rounds of the 2nd and 4th, and then it cycles back again with the 5th round, in which you go into your cell, and you kind of prepare yourself by increasing your strength and cunning. The reason, though, that I want to mention these events is because some of them are just optional things that you can choose to do based off of when it says that that action is able to be taken place. However, there are also mandatory participation events, and these are interesting because they require convicts to incorporate that decision into their planning for their actions on their turns. And also, you have to weigh the risks of, if I don't do that, suffering the consequences, is that going to be okay? Versus, is it just better to do what it says and accept that I will have a suboptimal or not completely efficient turn until the next event comes up in order to meet the needs of whatever the card is. Because typically, when you don't meet these mandatory participations, you end up going to the hole. And as you can see here, that is an action penalty. So anytime you experience that, it is going to reduce the amount of actions that you can do on your turn. You will either immediately suffer this action lost, or if you suffer it and it's outside of your turn, you'll go ahead and you'll keep this as a reminder that you have less actions the next time that it is your turn. So again, we've got these event cards that come into play and also signal the progression of the game if a player does not either escape or go ahead and reach Kingpin status prior. Then you also have these crime cards that will allow you to increase your reputation by following certain conditions. You have your escape cards that give you the criteria that you need, the value you need to leave for both strength and cunning, as well as any items that might provide bonuses for that. And yeah, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, that is a decent understanding of what takes place in the game. This is ANIMALCATRAZ. It has several different ways of playing. I have been describing the mode of playing in which it is 1 to 4 or 2 to 4, and it's competitive where everybody starts off in their own cell. There is also team play for this, so when you get at certain values, you can play up to 8 with that, and you have team play where you are working with someone else. There's also an advanced mode that allows you to bring in gangsters, and you essentially form a larger network outside of just your individual convict. So there are a lot of other elements that you can introduce to create variety and to create increased difficulty. For example, whenever you start off the game in Advanced, you start your reputation down at nobody rather than influential, which delays your reputation gain all the way up to the Kingpin status. And throughout the game, there are other marked aspects of play that are associated with that advanced mode. So there's a lot of content here. The base game itself does have an interesting decision space because you're trying to determine what's the best path forward while also either evading the other players or making it as difficult and action costly for them to reach you and mess with you, or you're actively pursuing them and trying to interfere with what they're doing for the sake of reputation gain on your own and for the sake of dismantling their strategy, whether it's escape or whether it is also building a lot of reputation in the game. That is, I think, pretty much everything you need to know. There is simple rules to follow for both attacking, for stealing, for corrupting. There's a natural progression of steps that you take for each of those actions, but really it is the mix of all of that at play in terms of the guards moving and what actions they're blocking. And does it make sense to push for an escape even if other players know what you're going for? Or does it make sense to kind of really up your reputation? There are a lot of decisions that kind of give you some meaty, some crunchy things to focus on. Yeah, again, this is a darker theme, so just be mindful of that. If there is anything in here that might be triggering to you as a worry, then be aware of that before you move in. But also, it's a very intriguing and unique and very visually memorable experience in terms of playing through this game. And also the animals, it kind of reminds me of almost Zootopia, but a very much darker bent on that world in terms of what you're doing here. This is ANIMALCATRAZ from Geronimo Games. If you have any questions, let us know. And as usual, we'll have our links down below so that you can check this out as it enters crowdfunding. Appreciate you guys. This has been another Board Game Co. preview. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.